Spent the past probably 5 to 10,000 hours trying to find the ultimate productivity hack. And the good news is I did find it. The bad news is that it's in a system, and this is part 2 of that system. Now, if you haven't watched part 1, we talked about how important it is to set separate blocks of time. I'm going to actually expand on this a little bit more because there's actually a second reason why we need to actually do it in a very specific way. The reason for this is because when you actually split your day into separate blocks, now you actually need to create a block for that block. What we don't actually realize is that every single time you start something, you're going to have a little bit of residue that's left over from your previous activity. So every single time you're switching between activities, it's actually really hard for you to get into what everyone likes to say is flow state. The reason for this is because it actually takes time for you to transition from one thing to another. So if you were to take yesterday's ideas and to combine it together, and then now you have blocks of very specific points of time where you're only blocking out and doing one specific thing. Then during those breaks, during each and every one of those times, you're only going to have one thing occupying your mind. Now, we can't actually do this every single time because we do have points where we can't just sit down and just spend like 5 hours doing something consecutively. But the point of this is that we want to minimize this as much as possible. If we're going to take a lunch break, we want to have nothing but that thing in our minds. If we're going to take a certain sort of break, we don't want to switch the context or the environment as much as possible so that when we actually get back into doing it, our mind is still really fresh. Our mind doesn't have to create a whole new context because actually creating a new context is actually really expensive. So if we were to keep as much of that context as possible, then that allows us to then add onto it. Now, there's actually a separate way to do it if you don't actually have this luxury, but this video is actually getting really long, so I'm going to leave this for tomorrow. And I'm going to have a third part to this series where I can then talk about what happens when you don't actually have that context. So I'll talk to you tomorrow.